Archery Nation. I am Coach Lucy from theflyingarcher.com and sponsored by New England School of Archery and Supplies, LLC. I wanted to talk to you quickly today about those of you that are out teaching at instructor, actually not instructor classes, but at camps. You come, you take an instructor class with me. About 130 archery instructors a year come through my instructor program. And after a few weeks of working with your campers, I figured I would give you some ideas, some tips, and a couple games. And the first thing I want to talk about is if you have noticed that the campers are like pulling the string back and the arrow's going like over the net and it's consistent. This is a problem that one camp said that they had. They're saying, oh yeah, last year the campers, they just started shooting arrows over the net. And I said, well, there's two things that might be going on. One, the campers might be bored. And two, it may be just a form issue. If someone is shooting and so they have their hand here, you notice how my arm would actually be above the arrow line? Well, if their back elbow is down like this, the arrow is going to naturally, go really high. So you want to make sure that your campers are in a T formation like this. His hands out straight. And a couple of tips on the T formation. They call it like a 1, 2, 3, is back elbow is up just a little bit, fingers at your smile, thumbs on your jaw, the shoulder is down, this elbow is creases like this, and hands towards the target. If your students look like that, they're pretty much not going to hurt themselves. What can happen is if you see something different, like their hand is up here, the back of the arrow can go into the eye, if the hand comes back here, the arrow can scrape the face. If their shoulders are way up here, they could scrape their arm with the string. If they have the elbows off this way, then the string could hit the arm. So you don't actually really have to remember all that, but that's what could happen, is if they look like this, in a nice T formation, then they should be good. I'm going to talk about aiming. Aiming is actually only worth maybe 2% of the entire form. If you do the form the same way every time, you can split arrows with your eyes closed. I don't recommend eyes closed. We want to have your form consistent. I do briefly go over aiming with most of my classes, instructor classes that is that you can get something as simple as a paper plate. And you say, draw your favorite food. I have no idea what that is, but maybe it's cotton candy. Just the perfect thing to eat before archery class. You then want to tack, you tell them you're going to tack your plate to the target, and you tack it about halfway down, and then you get an arrow from one of your students, and you talk about aiming. And there's one part which you actually come out to the target and you talk to them about it, and then there's another part in which you have them all stand on the shooting line, and they're only going to be touching the arrow, and that's all. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm just going to move my camera over a little bit. Okay. So what you want to talk about to them is your aim point is going to be lower than where the arrow is going to hit. This is your aim point, and this is your impact point. At this distance, which usually with beginners, you're starting at maybe 8 yards, 6 yards. As the target is moved back, your aim point rises to the point where your aim point will actually go right where the arrow is going to hit. And then even further back, your aim point will be up here for your arrow to actually hit on your plate. I'll do things like as they're shooting, if they, shoot all 3 arrows on their plate, then they can move their target back one big step. And that's how you want to start moving their targets back. It's just in a progression. Start out up close so that they have success and hit the target. And then as they get better, then you slowly move their target back. And that's how you can have a variety of students shooting at different skill levels, because they can be shooting at targets at different distances, and they're all standing on the same line at the shooting line. So that's the first part of this drill that I do with them. The second part is I have everybody have their feet on the shooting line in their proper stance and no equipment in their hands. I then take my bow hand, which would have an arm guard on, and I'd say, okay, we're going to take your hand and go, stop in the name of archery. And then everybody goes, stop in the name of archery. And then I say, okay, just pick up your arrow. They don't usually look so cool like this, and you can take your hand and you can put the arrow right between the index finger and your thumb, and then you can have it right back at your smile. You're going to look down the shaft of the arrow, and you're going to put the point of the arrow onto your aim point, which would be, oops, can you see? Okay, about there. And well, usually when I'm actually out front talking to them about this, I am not this close to the target, so I'll tell them, okay, so look down the shaft of the arrow, put your point onto your aim point, which should be about halfway between your plate and the bottom of the target. And then I watch everybody do their form. And again, this is like the T position. I'm making sure that their shoulders are good, the hands right at their smile, they have good form. You don't want their hand out like this or up here. That's what you don't want to see. So again, to show you correctly, so you see what correct is, the last part that I show you with this skill set is, again, you want to see them like this. And then everybody puts their arrows down and they step behind the weeding line. Then I have them shoot one end of 3 arrows at that distance doing aiming. And then I go up and I talk about where the groups are. Now, we'll just like imagine I have, say, student athlete shoots, camper shoots all the arrows over here. Well, if the aim point is right here, then you want to move your aim point over and up to bring your arrows over and up. If, let's say, all their arrows now, they actually have arrows up there, they've done shooting, and I go to each target and I explain what to do next. So let's say someone has an arrow here, one here, say one over here. I'll just focus on where the trend is. Okay, so you have 2 arrows right here. What you want to do is just move your aim point over and down so they move their arrows over and down. The key is to be aiming at the same aim spot for all 3 arrows. And so you're trying to find a general area where you want to aim at. Again, aiming is only worth like 2% of, say, 2% of the form. If you get the form correct, you do it correctly every single time, you will be splitting arrows. You start with them up close. You explain where your aim point is and impact point is. And then as the target goes further back, you explain how your aim point rises. And then you do a stop in the name of archery drill. And you have everybody go like this, just with their arrows. And I have perfect form. I'm actually doing this left-handed. Huh. I'm a right-handed shooter. But when I'm doing form work in front of people so that I can mirror everybody and everybody can see me, I will do my form left-handed. And some people think I'm a left-handed shooter. No, I am definitely a right-handed shooter. So this skill set is good to do, say, class 2. Class 1 is when you do a safety lesson. Safety lesson may take the entire class time to get everybody shooting and up to speed on the basics and just being able to shoot, what arm guard is, and all that cool and interesting things. I'm going to show you an aiming game. Now this game I usually wait for, say, class 4. If I'm running a 4-week class, 1 hour a week, third class, that is. I would use this for my third classes. I like to play a game called Save the Dragon. Well, basically, at Save the Dragon, our goal is to save the dragon who's been captured and is stuck in the sun. This is the sun. And you start with going on a journey. And in the journey, you go through the snowstorm, dead of night, ocean, fire, and into the sun. And you want to shoot in that order. So first arrow goes into the snowstorm. I would usually use 3 arrows. Then I put in another arrow into the target, into the dead of night. And then your third arrow, let's say it misses the ocean, it's going to say it hits the red. It does not count. You need to actually go in order of snowstorm, dead of night, and then ocean. Now let's say the arrow gets on the line. That means you can count both of them. You could actually do it in 3 arrows. You shoot your arrow into this line right here, and into the sun. So that's how you can do it in 3 arrows. Now, if I have students, they've been doing a lot of shooting, and I want to slow them down, I want them to start talking to each other, I can also have them shoot as teams of 2. They shoot at their own target. So what I would say is, okay, we're going to do this as teams. You're going to shoot at your own target, and they'll be, of course, standing next to each other. So the first person shoots, and you want to go for the snowstorm. The second person shoots, let's say, then they go for the dead of night. But let's say they miss the dead of night. That means the first person shoots again, and they go for the dead of night. So you go back and forth. One person shoots an arrow, another person shoots an arrow. It allows them to sort of slow down, talk with each other, and have a really good time. And so what I've covered over today, some very basic tips of how to deal with students if arrows are going over the target. If arrows are going over the target, say over the net, one, they could be bored. 2, they just may have some improper form. If their back elbow is right down, then arrows can go right over the target. You want to make sure that they look like when they're at full draw in this T position. If a student is misbehaving and they're doing it on purpose, and you realize that, you can go up to them quietly and talk to them and say, hey, if you do that again, I'm going to take an arrow away. 1 arrow. And boy, do they behave very quickly and do the right thing and hit the target. Sometimes I have said that to a kid and they've actually really were struggling with form, so I was like, oh, okay. So let's just look at it again and work with them with the form. The next thing I talked about was aiming. Aiming is only worth like 2% of the entire form. And the third thing was an aiming game. Aiming game is, say, class 3 or 4. I do that a little bit later because it is a little bit harder to play. And I just want to thank you for listening. And again, what I do in June is I certify 100, 130, 140 archery instructors. And I figured I'd give you guys a little gift and give you a little bit more details, information that may help you out. And not just for camp instructors, but for anybody who wants a new game to play to teach a new skill set. Again, this is Coach Lucy Morris from theflyingarcher.com, sponsored by New England School of Archery and Supplies, and you can also find us on Facebook at Lucy Morris Coaching. And have a wonderful day, Archery World.